We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio with our special guests, Dave Patson and Andrew Moran. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and how China took a great deal of advantage of purchasing the stuff that Joe Biden sold off. But now I want to talk a little bit about China's foreign adventurism that's taking place. Obviously, we're seeing this, gentlemen, we're seeing this in Africa quite a lot, where they're really getting a foothold. And recently, in South Africa, Chairman Xi Jinping, he congratulated the African nations on, I think that the exact words were, shaking off the yoke of colonialism. Now, am I right or wrong here? Is China really just opting for a new 21st century form of monetary and military colonialism in Africa? Let's start with you, Andrew, on that one.
Well, if you look at the Belt and Road Initiative, which is the Chinese way of just expanding its tentacles all over the world, Africa is one place, throughout the Middle East, South America. So China is really taking advantage of all these poor countries by saddling them with all this enormous debt and loans, and they're building up their infrastructure, creating jobs. I think to summarize the issue, there was a recent African president. I forgot which country it was, the president, but he said that China and Russia, they're the ones providing us with infrastructure. They're the ones providing us with jobs, but it's the United States that's dictating our internal policies. So I think that's the sentiment that a lot of countries are now having when it comes to Chinese companies or Chinese government flooding the country with all this yuan and all this development that's occurring throughout these regions.
Dave, what's your take on that? What kind of foothold? How does the foothold that China is getting, let's say in Africa, for example, how is that affecting what America's doing and America's, let's call it diplomatic weight within the world, which used to be, to my mind, something of great strategic importance, but perhaps not quite so much anymore?
Well, I think that as you point out, I don't think that the United States is being as impressive in Africa as it has been in the past. I think too that the near term shiny object of China and Russia. China actually now more than Russia, because Russia is otherwise engaged, but through their surrogate, the Wagner Group, I think that they're imposing a presence. Sudan, Niger, pick your favorite. They have a presence. China more so in terms of developing its intrusion into the social and cultural structure of African nations. They're now very intrusive into the K through 12 education system, and they basically are doing into Africa what they attempt to do here in the United States through the Confucius Institute and so forth, and that is to impose themselves into the culture and extol the virtues of their brand of communism/socialism.
But what's concerning is a lot of these governments, they're unable to service their debts to China. And just recently, Laos, they have a huge loan from China as part of the whole Belt and Road Initiative. And they were unable to repay the loan. So what China did is that the Chinese government associated firms, they took over the utilities company in Laos. So China is now responsible for the energy infrastructure in Laos. So when you see a lot of these African countries who are unable to service their debts, repay their loans, even just bow down now perhaps to Chinese interests, China could just say, well, you owe us all this money. If you don't repay, we'll just take over this key piece of infrastructure, that key infrastructure. So that's also worth this expansion of Chinese governments into every part is quite concerning for the domestic issues.
I mean, sorry, Dave, carry on, Dave.
It's even true in South America, Andrew. I mean,
yes.
You look at Brazil and their new president and how he is cozied up to the Chinese government and Chinese companies coming in. Ecuador is very much leaning toward developing a relationship with China. So on our back door, we have all of these initiatives that China is basically perpetrating. It's really disturbing because you're going to wake up one morning and you're not going to have a sushi place to go, but you will have spring rolls.
It's kind of strange to me because it seems that where before America was quite a leader in pushing for democracy, which I mean, there's another argument to be had there about how much involvement America should have in the setting up of governments in foreign nations. That's another argument to have. But it seemed before that it was all about human rights and making sure that people were watered and fed during emergencies. But then the shift went to teaching gender studies in schools and promoting various social mores that are not even considered a majority opinion within the United States. So perhaps it's a case of it wasn't so much as China overtook America in these diplomatic negotiations, but rather that America ceded its position by focusing on trying to bring an entire continent towards a progressive ideology rather than dealing with the nuts and bolts of let's get safety, let's get training, let's get food and water, let's get infrastructure in place. And China just stepped into that gap, didn't they?
Well, it's more of a case of having your cake and eating it too, because yes, on one hand, China is providing that type of investment to build those things. At the same time, the United States is fostering this ridiculous LGBT and the neo-Western values of gender studies, but they're subsidizing it. So Pakistan, let's use that as an example, which is also part of the Belt and Road Initiative in China. Pakistan, they got $10 billion to have gender studies, so they want this money. So they'll kowtow and say, "Yo, yes, we're going to learn about LGBT study and gender transitioning, give us $10 billion, but at the same time have their hand out and say, oh, yeah, give us Chinese dollar, give us Chinese yuan.
Dave, what's your take?
Oh, I think that the United States is in the unenviable position of having products to sell that nobody wants to buy. And that is, in a nutshell, what the United States under the Biden administration and the Obama administration before that, they have an agenda, a social justice agenda that they think that they can push on the United States, and by the way, we'll push it on the rest of the world. And it goes to this notion of the United States ridiculous concept of being now a leader in a globalist context. We aren't a leader in the globalist context if we continue to do what we're doing. It's just and it's a national security issue because the people within the United States are pretty much powerless when it comes to what the government's pushing, the U.S. government's pushing on the rest of the world, and they're not buying.
I think that appears to be the problem with much modern politics. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Dave Patterson and Andrew Moran after this short break. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.